Hi everybody, welcome back to my YouTube channel. This week, if you're not aware, is Feeding Tube Awareness Week, and I got a lot of requests on Instagram to do a video answering a lot of frequently asked questions and to kind of go through just the basics of a feeding tube. So that is what I'm going to be doing today, and I thought I would just start off with a brief explanation of what got me to a point where I ended up having to have a feeding tube. I have a connective tissue disorder, and that affects collagen production, and collagen is important in pretty much every function that the body does. So it's not uncommon to have dysmotility, which is, for people who don't know, motility means movement, motility means movement. So what that means is the way our body moves food through or anything, really, liquids, it doesn't matter what it is. And if it's slow, it means that food stays in your stomach or your small intestines and or your large intestine or colon. About 1.5 years ago, I had a total colectomy, which means they removed my entire colon because I had something called colonic inertia, which is pretty severe. It's basically paralysis of the colon. So we did everything we could for years with meds and different things, and it just wasn't it never worked, and it was actually sending food backwards when I ate and not the right way. So it was actually working against me. I had that done, and that helped things a lot, but I pretty quickly started having other motility issues, and we kind of thought that may be the case, but my doctors didn't want to do a full workup on it ahead of time, because if I had motility issues in other parts of my GI tract, according to my motility specialist, doing motility testing at that point isn't necessarily accurate, because it can be what they call secondary dysmotility. So it can be motility that it looks like things are slow, but things are slow up the other part of the GI tract from the colon because the colon is so slow. So they didn't want to do any workup until I had my colon removed, and unfortunately we found out that I do have a lot of dysmotility in pretty much every other part of my GI tract. So at this point, I had major heart surgery in September, and I've had motility issues after pretty much every single surgery I've had. I've had 8 spine surgeries. That's part of what made my colonic inertia so severe, was that they operated on me so many times in my abdomen, and they went through my stomach for a few of my surgeries. So that caused nerve damage, which made things worse. And it turns out anytime they operate kind of in my torso or abdomen area, it just causes my motility to slow considerably for about anywhere from 6 months to a year. It depends on the surgery and how major it was. So I had been having issues. I was having a really hard time maintaining my weight. I've had that issue for years at this point now. I was underweight, but my weight was stable, so we weren't going to do anything about it until I had this heart surgery, and everything just went haywire. Once they operated on me, my motility came to a screeching halt. Meds were not absorbing, because if I ate and food was just sitting in my stomach and I took medication, the medication couldn't break down and go into my small intestine where it's absorbed. We don't absorb anything in our stomachs. That's just where stomach acid breaks stuff down, and then it moves to our small intestines, which is ultimately where things absorb. So medication was just sitting in my stomach for hours, and things like sleep meds, for example, it would take me 6+ hours to fall asleep because meds were taking so long to absorb. So it was becoming a huge problem for me. And after my heart surgery, I lost like 12 pounds in a week, and I was already pretty underweight. So it put me in a really awful position nutritionally and weight-wise. So after struggling through for weeks, and I'm talking like my blood pressure was extremely low. I was really anemic. I was passing out regularly because I was just so weak from a lack of nutrition. And also I had major open heart surgery. So my body needed calories and food to recover, and I wasn't able to get it anywhere near what I needed to because I was so sick to my stomach. Eventually, I ended up back in the hospital for the 3rd time in a couple months, not long after my heart surgery, and my GI doctor, who had been out of town, he'd been out of the country for the previous 3.5 weeks, which is of course when everything fell apart. He had left the country like a day later. So his partner, who I know, I've worked with him many times, he kind of took over for that period while my doctor was out of town, and he was hesitant to intervene in any way. He had I'm trigger warning, if you have an issue with numbers, don't like fast forward through this, but I was down to 97 pounds and I'm 5'6". So I was in a really bad position and I was still losing weight. So finally I ended up in the hospital. My GI doctor, mine, came back like a couple days into that admission, thank God. A dietitian came to see me because at my hospital, if you're a certain amount underweight, they send a dietitian automatically. So she came to see me and she was extremely concerned about my nutritional status. So she talked to my GI doctor, she talked to me, she brought up the idea of a feeding tube at that point, because again, this wasn't like I just had one flare that got really bad and then I could kind of rebound. That's how it used to be, but as time has gone on, it's gotten worse. So it was bad enough that I just couldn't rebound fast enough for what my body needed, and it can get really dangerous. They did a 2-day calorie count in the hospital. They counted everything that I ate, and I was eating about a third of the amount of calories that I need to get every day. So she told my GI doctor, and at that point he pretty much agreed that there was no choice but to intervene at that point. So they gave me what's called a nasal, an NJ, which is like nasal jejunal, I think. And it's a tube that goes down your nose, down your throat, all the way down. It kind of threads. They thread it into your small intestine. That's what the J means. They also have NG tubes, which they thread and it just goes down to your stomach. So it doesn't go down as far as the NJ tube. And the reason we did an NJ was because my stomach motility is part of the problem. I have pretty slow stomach emptying. Putting formula in there just wouldn't do us any good. Like, it made sense to put it farther down my GI tract. So at the very least, I had a higher chance of absorbing what we're putting into my stomach. He did it because he wanted to make sure that I tolerated formula. Nothing against people. There are people who have feeding tubes that don't use it for formula or they don't tolerate formula. However, my GI is really opposed to doing it if a patient doesn't tolerate formula. So that's why they did the temporary tube. And I tolerated the formula well. I first had an allergic reaction to the first one they gave me, but we tried a second one and I did really well. And within 24 hours, I started to really feel a difference and was shocked because I had been so sick. So fast forward, I tolerated it. We ended up moving ahead with the surgery, and I now have what's called a GJ tube. So it's a tube that is external. I'll insert pictures for you guys, but I access it on the outside of my abdomen, and there's like a little balloon inside, which is what holds it in place so it doesn't just come flying out of your stomach. And there's a tube that goes into my G, so my stomach, and then there's part of a tube that goes into my J. So the reason we did a GJ is because you can use the G tube for venting and draining, and there are also certain medications that have to go through my G tube, but I think I take like 1 or 2 meds that go through there. Otherwise, everything else can go through my small intestine. So at this point, I use my G tube for venting and draining. If you don't know what that is, it's a little kind of gross. So if you're eating, you should probably fast forward about 30 seconds. But it's essentially where you can connect to your stomach with like an extension set, and you get to pull, like you pull back on this syringe and it will pull back whatever basically is stuck in your stomach. So for me, if I have food that has been there, I had like an apple, I think last week, and I had apple come out of my stomach literally like 8 hours later. It should have been completely out of my stomach at that point. So it helps because if stuff just sits there, it makes me feel full, obviously, because my stomach is full still, and it can become a problem because my appetite then is worse and I'm more nauseous, and then I have a harder time intaking calories. So that has been very helpful. I get this question a lot, but you can eat with a feeding tube in theory. So some patients have such severe dysmotility that they'll just throw up if they eat, even with a tube. So those patients don't. But in my case, I'm on several motility medications too. So that's part of why I'm able to eat more orally. But my GI doctor and the dietitian and my motility doctor are really intense about the fact that they want me to eat orally as well, because when you don't, you lose even more motility. And obviously we would like to avoid that happening because it's going to happen anyway. So we might as well try and do our best to slow down the process if we can. So I do eat. I get about, depends on the day, but I get about, I would say, half of my calories to 2/3 of my calories through my tube, and then the rest is oral intake. Every body is different in terms of what people require. I require a lot of calories. My body burns a lot of calories. I have no clue why. It's just, I think, genetic. A lot of people in my family have pretty fast metabolism, so I have an even higher requirement. There are some people that, I know a few people that only need like 1,000, 1,200 calories, partly they're also very sedentary, but I need well over 2,000 calories a day. So anyway, so those are the questions that turned into a lot longer than a very short explanation. So I am now going to go ahead and start going through the supplies that I used, and I will show you how I set up my feeds. As I kind of go through the supplies, I'll explain what I'm doing and what it's for and how it works. So I'm going to go grab stuff and I will explain it in just a second. So I am going to go ahead and show you all of my different supplies. I'll start by explaining what these supplies are, and then I will go from there. Okay, so first things first, when you have a feeding tube, for me, because I had medication issues, it only made sense for us to make sure that I could put meds through my tube. So you start out with a tube that's called a dangler. I'll insert a picture. It is extremely bulky and very annoying. Most doctors, it's like anywhere from 6 to 8 weeks. Some it's even longer. But once you have the dangler, they can go in and they can remove that, and then they put in what they call a button. There are 2 different kinds of buttons. There's Mickey button and AMT. I currently have a Mickey. I'm hoping to try an AMT next time. People have very different views on both of them. There are things I like about the one that I have now and things I don't like. So kind of is what it is. What happens is, because it's so low price, you would think I was on something. Not. It's low profile. So for example, right now, if I were to stand up, I'm not connected, but you can see, you can see it here, but for the most part, it is just, you can't really tell it's even there. And that's kind of the goal. Obviously I'm connected to it most of the time, so you can still tell it's there, but it's just less bulky than the danglers are. And then danglers, it's probably TMI, but they smell, they get really gross, and you can't fully clean them out. So it's, oh, it drove me crazy. I cleaned it several times a day, trying to make sure it was as clean as humanly possible. So anyway, okay, so what you do is you connect what is called an extension set. This is by the brand Mickey. Don't know if that's gonna focus. Whatever. These are okay. I don't hate them. I don't love them. So they have what's called this is what people call a Christmas tree or Y adapter. And what you do with this is you take what's called a catheter tip syringe, and there's nothing in this right now, but you connect it like this. So it doesn't screw in, like this just kind of comes in and out. I haven't had issues with this particularly. I've had a few, but there are some people who can't stand this kind of adapter. So they also make what they call an N-fit syringe, or I don't know, extension set / adapter. And this also glows in the dark. It's really cool. These are like the wrong size for me. For some reason they sent them, and they're sending me more, but in the meantime I'm just using this one, which is getting pretty dated, we'll say. Okay, so I connect to my tube, and then I go ahead and, for medication in particular, just for an example, I'm gonna just do kind of an extra med I have lying around. So there are a bunch of different kinds of pill grinders. This is the one that I use. I got it on Amazon. I will, in the description below is actually my Amazon favorites page, and this is on there. So if you're interested, you can get one. I really like this one. Put the lid on, and then it comes with this little like screw thingy. Okay, so that's the pill. Then what I do is I use this little anchor hawking thing, which I'm like obsessed with. I actually bought it before I had a feeding tube, and it's perfect for what I need it for my tube. So I pour powder in here. My GI doctor does not want my tube to get clogged if we can avoid it, obviously. A lot of doctors are actually not comfortable with people putting meds through their J tube at all. However, mine gave me permission to try it. If it didn't work, obviously we wouldn't do it anymore, but it's been fine, so I just do this. So I heat this, it's water, it's purified water. Some people use what's called sterile water. Here, I was told that they only use sterile water at the hospital and that purified water is just fine. If you think about it, it's essentially going to my small intestine. So if I would eat it or drink it, specifically drink it, it's okay to go into my tube. That's, you know, I mean, I've never put like coffee in my tube or things like that. My point is that you can just do regular water, and so I pour this in here. See, this isn't currently hot, but then I swirl it. Again, this isn't hot, so it's not gonna like dissolve the powder as well. Then I would take this is a little trick that I figured out. Most people get just these like 60 cc syringes. I like them. However, if I need to go out places, I have one medication in particular that already comes in liquid form. So I have preloaded syringes before and taken them with me in case I need it. So I use these smaller ones. They're 35 cc's. I get a total, most insurance covers 10 syringes a month. So I think I get like 6 of these a month and 4 of these. I prefer these, again, for meds. They're just smaller. So here, what I do is I suction all of that up. There we go. Now that's empty. So there's that. So I would just connect this to my extension and I would push it in. I don't take this medication anymore, so I'm not going to do that. So I'm sitting here editing this video that you've been watching, and I need to split it into 2 parts. I didn't originally intend for it to be that way, so I didn't get to end the video halfway through. So I just wanted to say thank you so much for watching.